First of all, I want to say thank you to David for being the Seattle champion of Creative Mornings and bringing Creative Mornings to Seattle. I've been wanting this to be here for quite some time, and I'm really appreciative. So good morning, and thank you for coming on a Friday morning, Friday the 13th, no less. I'm really excited to be here, and if you didn't pick up your Lucky Charms, you'll need those for the rest of the day. No black cats walking across you. So I am a co-founder and designer of a local startup called Jackson Fish Market. And invariably, there's this conversation that happens when I go to like a social networking event, and they're like, what do you do? And I'm like, oh, I'm a founder of a startup. And they're like, oh, you code, you're a developer. I'm like, no, I'm a designer. And they're like, oh, interior designer? I don't understand. I'm sure you guys get that a lot too. I'm like, no, I design experiences for users. I think about like the need of the user and try to delight and surprise and help them along the way in completing their task. And they're like, they get this real confused look on their face. And they say, but you're a founder of a software startup. I'm like, yes. So that brings me to the topic of this talk. I mean, I think it makes me think about design as a profession a lot. In fact, for the past 5 years, I've been really sort of obsessed with it. Like where the design discipline is headed, the nobility of it, or lack thereof, the skills and the talent and the people who make up the design discipline. And what I want to talk about today is about that shift of designers who work at an agency, who service consultants, or who service clients, that shift from them as service providers to makers, leaders, creators of things for people. And you know, I left my job. I worked at a very large software company in Redmond for a long time, and it was an amazing experience. They taught me how to ship software. They taught me how to make things for millions of people around the world, which is something I will always value, and I still continue to learn every day. But I left that cushy job to do my own startup for sort of more on a more intimate scale, to have better, sort of more direct impact with the user and accountability, and I'll talk about that a little later. So when I look around Seattle, you know, this is sort of the new Silicon Valley, where big companies like Microsoft and Amazon are. I see a problem. Designers aren't making it to the top of their profession in these tech companies, and things are changing. There are companies that are they get the value of design and they want it, and they're snatching them up. Facebook plans 20 acquisitions of design firms to bring that creative talent into their companies. And this is really great news for our industry, but it doesn't really address the problem that sort of bothers me and keeps me up at night. And that's the problem of design leadership. Where is the CDO, the chief experience officers at these companies? It's happening, but it's happening slowly and it'll take some time. I guarantee it will happen. But right now, designers are still reporting up the chain of command to engineers, and that, to me personally, doesn't feel quite right. It's a hard problem to fix. But for me, again, this is a personal story this morning. It's not a problem that I'm interested in solving anymore. And it's because of my experience with the startup that I sort of stumbled into. Right now, I want to be in charge of my own destiny, my own successes, my own failures. I want to be able to say that I succeeded on my own or with my partners, or I failed and I learned exactly what happened to let down a user or to fail. So I'm sort of channeling our friend Enrique Allen from from the Bay Area who starts the Designer Fund. He has a venture capital firm that helps. They invest in design-founded companies. And the sort of idea that I want to posit, and I know a lot of you already get this, but most of you don't even know if it's an option, but founding your own startup may be the biggest opportunity for the design field today. And we're sort of leaving it wide open. It's ours for the taking, but we're not really stepping up and getting it. And before I get the stink eye from all the studio heads here, afraid they're going to lose all their designers, I just have a couple of caveats. The first caveat is I realize there's many different types of design entrepreneurship. You can run your own agency, your own studio, and produce great work and be great peer collaborators with clients. You can make things like beautiful t-shirts and stationery and physical products. And the thing that I want to focus on this morning is really around software and technology. It's because, partly it's because what I understand and it's what I've been entrenched in for the past, 10, 15 years. But I do think this applies to other sectors. It's just, to me, it's the most exciting thing that's happening today. The most exciting products that are being made today that are game changers, that are disruptive, that are changing the way we do business and marketing and distribution and manufacturing is in software. And I think that's just, it blows my mind. The second caveat is this talk comes with no value judgments. There's nothing wrong with being a designer that services clients. In fact, that's what I do half the time. That's how we bootstrap. Jackson Fish bootstraps our own products by doing consulting work. And it's very satisfying work. It's very rewarding. My talk today is about that opportunity that's there for those designers. So despite that lack of the top design jobs that we have at the larger businesses, I'm seeing an interesting sort of inflection point and a trend for our discipline. We can head down this path where the majority of designers, and I did some research and I looked up, the AIGA, the salary poll, what is that called? The salary survey? Yeah. And most designers are still down that path of a service bureau or a consultant. Or we could sort of change that perception of design and the discipline more as leaders and makers of things. And there's a couple of sort of nuanced little things that you may know about or that's happening or may not, but that's happening sort of outside of design that's causing this, I think. When it comes to software development resources for finding developers, it's still hard to find good developers, but they're no longer just isolated to the US or to one area. You can find them, they're sort of accessible everywhere. And it's software is sort of encountering that same effect as the semiconductor business did in the 1980s, where it's it's easier, not to say it's really easy, but it's easier to fabricate, apps, websites, and things in your garage. And also, there are all these software components and platforms, these jQuery libraries and these open source components where you can roll your own UI very easily without having to invest a lot of money or time. And more importantly than that, I think the distribution channel to distribute your product is really different in software. And this is a big game changer in the market, the sort of app marketplace. So no longer does a brand, for a traditional brand in a brick and mortar store, has to think about manufacturing or inventory, fulfillment, a sales force to sell your stuff, or fight for shelf space on a retailer's store. But we have these built-in app stores, these marketplaces, whether it's the iTunes store or the Google Android market, where SEO is built in, and you have this captive audience of people who are looking to buy something. They're in the mood to buy something, and they have their credit card already stored in that, buy button. It takes just one button to click and buy. So it's a really different kind of shopping experience or distribution experience that makes things, extremely easier than it did in the past. So we're seeing design, we all know that design is a differentiator, but this is shifting to more design as day one. They're not just selling a thing that you use, but they're selling the design itself. And this comes in lots of different flavors. And I just want to highlight some of the things that some of the people who are doing inspiring things that are entrepreneurial-like. Does anyone use Pinterest? Everyone uses Pinterest, yes. It's the hot new thing. Well, Evan Sharp is he's an architecture student. And he was a designer, just a regular designer at Facebook. Not super senior in any way. And he has $37.5 million in funding for Pinterest. Does anyone use Basecamp? The 37 Signal products? Yes. So that was actually founded, so Jason I think he's more of a web developer, but he partnered with Carlos Segura, who's an awesome designer, and another guy. No one ever remembers his name. I feel bad for the guy. But the three of them started 37 Signals because they were trying to solve problems of their own as an agency. Like they were trying to solve this sort of collaboration, project management thing, and it ended up being this huge product that with a huge success, and it took a long time to get there. But it's a really inspiring story. We always look at them as sort of our inspiration for our company. Another sort of developer-designer duo is the guys from Instagram. And I think it was Mike, who's the one who graduated from Stanford with the Human Interaction Design program, and then he went to work as an intern at Microsoft, and then he worked at Meebo for a year, and now he's doing really cool stuff with Instagram, and they have, I don't know, millions of dollars and billions of users. And I had to put a woman in here because I was feeling left out. But Alexa, she was a consultant at Adaptive Path in San Francisco. And she built food spotting because she realized that she was trying to solve a problem where she was looking for good food and pictures of food, not just lists and ratings, but that was near her. She created food spotting, and it is now a very successful business with lots of funding, and they're doing great. And to embarrass David a little bit, a local spotlight, they're what you think is a design agency, a traditional design agency, but they're really not that traditional. They have they actually make product, and their product, they make several different products, but the one that I really like a lot and I think is doing well from my perception is the UI stencils, and that came out of an idea of a marketing sort of promotion idea for their clients, and it sort of blew up when it I don't know, was it CES or some other conference that someone got word of it, and they all of a sudden were sold out in 20 minutes. So I talked about all these great examples of successful startups, but it's really hard, it's very risky, and I guess I kind of want to touch on the reasons why you would actually want to do one. Or why I did one. I don't know why you want to do one. I know I wanted to do one. And again, I'm going to reiterate that being a design entrepreneur isn't for everybody. And I don't think everyone should be doing it. I think 90% of them will fail. And the only way you know how to get better at it is to keep on doing it. I'm a very slow learner, and we've shipped over 24 products in the past 5 years. And they keep on getting better, and it's little by little. So the first sort of message I have around why I think it's really pretty amazing to be your own, the founder of your own company is around accountability. And this is something I didn't get even working as an agency or even at Microsoft, was that direct responsibility for the user who's using your product. We have a product called A Story Before Bed, and it's where you record audio and video to children's books. And there are these memories that they keep, and the kid can play it back and stream it on their iPad. And once someone we lose their data. We lose grandma reading to the grandson, that is like, that just makes my stomach turn. But it's also this really amazing experience too when we get these love letters in our mailboxes coming from soldiers stationed in overseas who use our product to keep in touch with their kids. And totally, it's an amazing feeling to know that you were directly responsible for that success or failure. There's also the opportunity to make a lot of money like those guys did in the earlier examples, but there's also the risk of starting out really scrappy and giving up that cushy, nice paycheck. And again, the sense of pride and accomplishment that you did it on your own or with your partners, that you can't really blame the jerk in marketing or that Deb who wouldn't do the login page properly. You can't blame that person. You can only blame yourself. And I think that that's incredible. And lastly, for me, it's about independence, and it's about making something that is really worthwhile and meaningful to me. And I think that's where probably you'll see a lot of the most sort of successful products is they come out of this really deep place inside of you where you feel like you're solving a problem of your own and you're invested. So I have just a couple of minutes to wrap up my talk because I really want to get to Q&A, and I know there's a lot of stuff that I left out. I'm just going to leave you with some of my good luck charms, and they're these quotes that I have up on my walls, and they inspire me every day as I chug away at the startup. I'll read the first one because it's kind of hard to read, but this one comes from PayPal. I actually might take this down because I'm really mad at PayPal right now. It's really a miserable piece of software for the merchant. But he says his first company is Max, what's his last name? I can't remember. Lechkin, yeah, sorry. His first startup failed with a great bang. The second one failed a bit less, but still failed. The third one, properly failed, but it was kind of okay, and he recovered quickly. The fourth one didn't fail, it did okay. Number 5 was PayPal. Now, 4 startups before you make it to PayPal is actually a pretty good track record. But I still think that that's inspiring. And one from Dr. Seuss. And the last one from Steve Jobs. So that's all I have this morning, and I just want to dive into Q&A.
Do you feel it's important to surround yourself?
Sorry, 1 second. I'll give you a microphone.
Do you feel it's important to surround yourself with at least 1 or 2 other very creative, entrepreneurial type people? Or can you go into something like this on your own?
Well, it depends on what you're doing, but if you're doing software, most designers actually can't build stuff, not in a way that they can't write production code that I would rely on unless they have a CS degree and I've seen their code, or I've had someone who knows what they're doing review their code. As far as other creatives, I actually that's why I rejoined AIGA. I mean, that's because I felt a little isolated. Doing your own startup it was a big shift from being at a big company with lots of people around you and resources. And there really isn't room in a lean startup to have a lot of people in each discipline. And so for our company, it's me, the designer. Hillel is sort of UX. He's creative, but he's also very much in the business sense. And then the third one is Walter, who's the developer. And so I look to other sort of groups to get inspiration from, and that's been working out pretty well. Any other questions?
You just talked about a UX person that you work with, but you sort of seem to blur the line between the science design the ability to make something that someone doesn't want to throw up on when they look at it. Like, the stuff you have is really beautiful, but like, you didn't, I'm more curious to know like how you talk about or think about the science behind making something that's actually functional.
So making something that's functional or something that's usable?
Yeah, I guess it's sort of the same thing in my mind, at least. Like, that you can use it and it works well.
Yeah.
And it has to go together.
Yeah, I agree. And that's the great synergy that we have being in a small, intimate group, is that I can go over to Walter's desk and we can look at real production code and get a sense for how it feels, because I can't do that as quickly in the tools that I have as a designer. There is a lot of training that goes with being a UX designer and understanding psychology and patterns and behaviors of users and aspirations that comes with training and comes with, frankly, shipping. And when you ship software products, that isn't the end, that's the starting point. As soon as you ship software is when you learn, like the behaviors, learn that if your design actually worked or not and where you need to tweak and move around the sliders and knobs to make that experience better. You're constantly working toward that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I guess I was also kind of wondering if you thought like the non-UX based designer had some sort of role to play when it comes to the experience of a product that's software based.
I see. Yes. So it depends how good or how well versed the sort of developer is about user experience. And nowadays it seems like all developers who's working with designers kind of understand that and they're learning from their counterparts. But I don't think that there's a science behind it, and it's actually pretty relatively bleeding edge stuff. You know, user experience as a discipline is just those programs and curriculums in schools are just being formed now, and it'll be interesting to see what kind of training and what kind of tools are available to people who are new to that, like such as a developer, to learn more.
As a maker of many different disparate products and a consultant on the side as well, Jackson Fish sort of redefines my personal definition of a startup. I usually think of a startup as one product, sort of, this is what we're going with.
Yeah.
Is there a beauty to the word startup that you've decided to go that route rather than as a traditional agency name? Or why do you define yourself as a startup?
Well, our goal isn't, I mean, I hope this is recorded. We have clients, and we do a pretty high-end user experience consulting. That bootstraps our products so that we don't have to take outside investment, and we don't have to put money out on, from our pockets. Now, we made that conscious choice because we don't have the appetite to work with other investors who don't have the expertise in making great products and great software. And so we've said no to VC funding, and that isn't something that most startups do. And in fact, we're really different. We're not. But I like to characterize it as startup because that's our main goal. Our mission is to keep on making really great, beautiful experiences. And we want to own that. We want to own the IP, we want to own the design, and we want to be leaders in that space. And so that's why I always talk about, when people confuse me with a software developer, I don't get so offended anymore. And so does that answer your question? Okay.
Enough.
Okay.
Hi,
Hello.
I'm Janessa.
Hello.
So once your products are designed, what is your go-to-market strategy to get them out in the world?
That is a good question. We don't have a marketing department, and we don't have a marketing budget. We rely a lot on SEO, especially in the App Store, because that is your best chance of getting the user what they're looking for matched up with your product. We rely on, for a story before bed, we tried many, many different things. A list as long as my arm, but social media, Twitter was a total failure for us. because I guess grandmas aren't on Twitter. So things like, making special offers for, like, trying to really figure out who your audience is actually kind of tough. And so we found a really special need for our product in schools and libraries and also in the military. And the military is, we give them subscriptions for free. So it's a combination of things. I mean, it's trial and error. I mean, for us, because we don't have that expertise in-house. Anyone else? Over there. Yeah, he's bringing you the microphone.
Oh, thanks. Hi. I wanted to ask you a question in terms of your lessons learned. If you had one lesson to pass on to aspiring young designers to start up their own startup, what would that be? What do you wish someone would have told you a few years ago? Any piece of advice?
There's actually two things. The first thing is, I wish when I was at my comfortable job, secure job with lots of resources and things like a library and like scientists, that I had really taken advantage of making those connections earlier on, because now I need that resource and it's hard for me to get that because I'm no longer tied to a huge Fortune, 50 brand. So I encourage, that's the first piece of advice. The second piece of advice is finding a co-founder that really believes in the same has the same values and goals that you do. And it's not just like, oh, I want to make software for, third world countries and cleaning water. That isn't the goal. Like for us, the goal was independence. The goal was continuously making great products. And so that has really been the glue for our relationship, and much like a marriage, like it's a long-term commitment, and picking the right people at the get-go is really important. Over here, Richard. How are we doing on time?
Good, I think. You've got Startup Weekend going on. Is that this weekend?
Oh, sorry, I should mention that, yeah.
Yeah, because I think that would be a really great thing, like if people want to get out, network, try things on, and kind of join a small agile team. Can you plug it a little?
Absolutely. And you're wearing a Startup Weekend shirt. Are you from Startup Weekend?
I've been to 6 or 7.
Oh, wow, okay. So I've never been to a Startup Weekend, but it's this crazy fun thing that happens on a weekend where people don't sleep and they make a product from like beginning to end. And this weekend is a very special edition of Startup Weekend, which is the rise of the designer. And it's exactly the types of things that I'm talking about today. And so designers are pairing up with developers, or pairing up with other designers, and they're actually making their own startups. And you're going, right, this weekend? And at the end, there's going to be a demo, and there are judges, and apparently I'm a judge, I guess. Yeah, I just don't know what time to be there. But anyway, so that's you should check it out, Startup Weekend. And also, isn't there another Startup Weekend? There's another initiative.
I'm not sure.
There's something in February. It's like, it's like a startup. I don't know if it's a weekend. I think it's like but it is a concentration of like a couple days.
Yeah.
It's like an intense, like day-long.
They're doing different boot camps. So Startup Weekend, if you're not familiar with it, started a few years ago with the guy Andrew Hyde out in Boulder. Then a couple of guys bought it out and have actually worked out of this building, and now they're kind of here in the South Lake Union area. But it's in cities worldwide, and it's a really easy way for you to get out and like, okay, you're doing your regular job, but you can go try some things on, and especially some of these startup experiences that Jenny is talking about. And so my name is Brian Zag. I'm with Ignite Seattle, Bootstrapper Studios. The startup community needs you guys. We can't have a healthy ecosystem in Seattle without you guys participating. And so that's kind of my plea to you is like, you don't have to go like quit your job and go start a company. Just try some things on. And Startup Weekend is a really accessible way. So if you go to Startup Weekend, I think it's startupweekend.com.
Org.
Yeah. And look for the Seattle one for this weekend, find directions. But that's my big plea to you. That's why Adam and I and Richard come do videos for this. This is why we helped David start Creative Morning Seattle. We need you guys to participate in all the things that Jenny's talking about, to have a creative ecosystem so we can do more amazing things here. And you're really, really important. And I don't know that we get, there's only a few occasions that I've seen where we get like a lot of you in the same room, like at Hive and here sometimes, to let you know that we really need you to participate in the ecosystem of the Seattle community. So that's my plea. And yeah.
Thanks, Brian. Brian's awesome.
I would concur with those comments, and I would add one other thing. The regular startup weekends that are focusing on mobile devices or web-based business startups, they almost always are desperate for artistic elements because they produce
and the ones they kicked ass had good design.
Yeah, almost invariably, if you can come across.
Yeah, because the ones that win have designers on them. The other ones look like shit.
Almost.
Yeah, that's usually how I can tell. But again, designers don't just make things pretty. We all know that.
Especially when it comes to animation. So that really adds a lot.
We have one more question over here. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah, totally. It was like, I went Startup Weekend a year ago, and it was like 90% devs, and it was so hard to get anybody to understand why they need to work with somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, you guys have skills, like really like awesome skills that are needed. Cool.
So,
over here.
I think for a lot of designers, it's a little daunting to do a startup.
Yes.
Because we all know how to design, but the whole business side of it is kind of scary, I guess. So, like, what was your beginning experience, and how did you learn and grow from that?
Well, again, like I said, I am a very slow learner. And I was very, very fortunate that I had the right partners. And we took baby steps. We tried little projects here and there. And the one thing I can't stress enough is just continue shipping. Like, continue. Don't wait until you think everything's perfect, because nothing will ever be perfect. But that's the beauty of software, is that you can change it. You know, it's not like you have to go and do another run for color with lamination and embossing. You know, it's a lot easier to make those changes and tweaks. And I think that was my first sort of, the first year when we started shipping stuff. I was so nervous that things didn't look perfect, because I was so used to being in a little more control of that, and it still takes me a while to let go of that. If it's 80% there and it does what it needs to do, let's just get it out the door and see how the users react, because they do some crazy stuff that you never expect. And one thing it's kind of interesting on A Story Before Bed, we have a 1-800 number, and at first we paid some agency in the Philippines to answer our calls. We trained them, and they were really great, but we only got like one call a day, or even if that, like once a week, and it was expensive. So we decided, okay, let's not do this. Even though this is a great idea, if it's a marketing idea, that people feel comfortable with that 1-800 number. I can call someone, talk to a real person if I get in trouble. We decided to have that number redirected to our cell phones. And I thought, when Hillel posed that idea, I was like, you are crazy. I do not want grandmas and grandpas calling me. But you know what? I love it. And he does most of it, but I take turns when he's like on vacation or something like that. And it is so incredible talking to your customers. And when they find out that you're the owner of the company, they're like, they feel very important. And also, not only do you get to experience their pain points and really feel their frustration and learn from that, or help them out, you get to upsell them to your subscription, or you get to. It's this amazing resource that I think that we often overlook. Over here.
I have a question about what you said about a co-founder. Do you think it's important to have someone, or I guess how do you balance this out? Have someone, like you mentioned, that has the passion and that agrees with the direction that you want to go, versus someone who maybe has a couple skills that helps, that as together you become a more diverse team. Do you see what my question is?
Yeah, I mean,
which is more important, or how do you balance that?
I think like diverse skill sets, more importantly, like you guys all agree on the same goals. Like and again, not just the goals of what you're building, although that's really important too, but it's it really fundamentally you believe the same principles of what it means to like make something for somebody and have them use it. And that you know, I think there's also this sort of other level of respect that you have for the discipline. Like I respect, you know, Hillel's business choices when he's thinking about different avenues of, you know, of partnerships, of business development partnerships. And, you know, Walter and Hillel respect my design decisions. You know, they have input, but ultimately they know that I'm an expert in that, and that's my job, it's my livelihood, and they trust me. So I think that, I guess everything, but if I were to rank, yeah, like fundamentally the goals and sort of values and principles first. Is that it? Oh, over here.
I was just going to say real quick, along the lines of Startup Weekend, we still have another week or two, I think, where we're accepting applications for the Designer Fund.
Oh, okay.
So go to thedesignerfund.com and apply there. And if you get accepted into the program, we have mentoring, there's money that comes along with that, so there's some funding involved too. And the idea there is to take design founders and pair them up with other design co-founders who have been through the process before to provide as well as give you access to venture funding if that's what you're looking for.
So just to repeat what David said, since he isn't mic'd, I touched on it just slightly before, but the Designer Fund, and David, you're a mentor there, right? The Designer Fund is this fund that basically is a support system, mentorship, matchmaking, and money for designers who want to be founders. And it has an amazing sort of registrar of mentors and a roster of mentors, and some really interesting stuff's happening out of that space. So check out designerfund.com. There's a couple more weeks for applications. That's what David said. In the back?
I just want to follow up on Janessa's question about how your go-to-market strategy, because I think the way you spoke of it, it was like a little bit piecemeal and kind of random, but I know, given your success rate, that can't be true. So
it's true.
So exactly,
I'm telling you, it's true.
At what point did it start to move into more than just luck and trial and error?
It's a lot of trial and error. Like, I can't stress that enough, that we decided, like, you know, 2 days before a huge Santa promotion, like we hired Santa actors to like read children's books to kids with their names in it. And it took us 2 days to decide we were going to do that and build it. I mean, things happen so fast that we learn from every experiment. We make tiny, small bets, and we learn something, a good nugget here that we can apply to the next one. And I just can't, it is truly random.
Do you mind giving just a case example of like one of the products that you rolled out and how it gained momentum? Because I think just for the people who would be interested in starting up their own businesses here,
yeah, it's
dangerous to think that trial and error and good luck is always what's going to float you. So
that's a fair point. And I should also be totally upfront, like, we're not over the hump. You know, we're not Instagram, we're not Pinterest. Like, we're still working at it. So we're not, I wouldn't say in my definition that we're successful yet. So that's a fair point to raise. The example that gave us a little momentum, I'll just use the Santa one, is that we realized over time that the best way to retain customers and to grow our user base was actually to build a relationship with them. That our product was so complicated, and we picked the worst product to build. webcams, the internet, grandmas, and publishers. Like we couldn't have picked a worse, set of ingredients. So we realized we had to explain to them what it was. We had to build trust, and it was through email. And we knew that we had to build that email base. To do that, it was getting around Christmas time last year, and I said, why don't we have just a random thought? I think I saw some Santa ad, and I said, well, why don't we hire a bunch of Santas and have him use our product and read to, people sign up and they enter their kid's name and they can say, ho, 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 Kevin, Merry Christmas, and they'll read a story and record it over and over and over and over again. So we sent it to a mommy blogger. She sent it out to everyone else. And we had, oh my God, like thousands and thousands of signups, more than I could fulfill, because I only hired 2 Santa actors. And Hillel was in Israel, and I'm like, shut the site down, shut it down, like I can't fulfill all these orders. But our mailing list grew like I think tenfold in 24 hours. And so we did it again this year. I was more prepared. I got more Santa actors. And we did it ahead of time, and again, it repeated itself. So when we see pattern, we see repetition, we do it again. Like there's no reason not to. So that's an example. Over here, Richard. Just one second. Sorry, he's going to bring you the mic.
When you began your startup, did you stay with your safe job, or did you leave your small company in Redmond first?
I left and I took a break. I went to Thailand for a month, and I did this whole thing on an island with a monk, and it was awesome. I took a break and then I went into it fresh. Yeah, so I quit that first, but I wasn't as prepared as I should have been, or I wish I had been, with making contacts and making sure I was, had everything I could take from that company before I left. Not like computers or anything, but but like knowledge,
Just touching on the big rollout strategy point, I think Eric Ries's book, The Lean Startup, really talks a lot about this fundamental principle that Jenny's talking about of small experiments, small bets. Basically, every business decision is an experiment. You try it, you do it in incremental steps, and go for it. I think the rollout strategy is a big rollout strategy, and a big plan is just as risky in many ways. I mean, many of you from studios, you've been a part of big projects. I've been a part of big projects where hundreds of thousands of dollars or even millions of dollars are spent on big campaigns and big rollout plans. There's a conference going on right now in Las Vegas, CES, where millions of dollars around those sorts of plans are being spent right now that are going to fail at about the comparable rate of the small incremental thing. So
even more so, I think.
It's just not to kind of pick sides or start a debate or anything. It's just everything is risky. And this is just kind of another approach to do it. Do small bets, small experiments, see what works, be agile, kind of learn from it as you go.
Yeah, that's Eric Ries and the Lean Startup. And speaking of books, there's another book that is by Stephen Heller. I'm sure you guys have books by him. It's called The Design Entrepreneur, and that actually focuses not so much on tech, but other design entrepreneurships of products that people are shipping. I just read it on the plane, so it was good.
You said that you wish you had taken some resources from Microsoft when you left. What was the most important resource you wish you had taken?
Just connections. Yeah, I wish I had taken all those. I wish I had taken all those meetings with developers who wanted to have coffee, or just smart people. There's a ton of smart people there, a ton of smart people everywhere. Talent, talent, finding people who would be able to contract with me on the side. Yeah, that's the primary one.
I'm just curious how you came up with your company name.
So Jackson Fish Market was founded in 1943 by my partner Hillel's grandparents in Detroit. And they made beautiful products for their customers. They were handcrafted pickles and herring, and they had really great relationships with their customers. And that was sort of the philosophy that we wanted to sort of invoke in our company. So we resurrected the name, and it was actually called Jackson's Fish Market, but we thought that sounded weird, so we changed it to Jackson Fish Market. I think that's it. All right. I hope this was useful to you guys. Thank you.